You know, Stephen A., I'm glad you wore your A-game suit today, because I got an A-list quote for you, sir. Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott alike, hoping to have a redemption season. Zeke explained that. In our first meeting, Coach Kellen Moore said our number one goal this year is to be the NFL's number one offense. I need to see Stephen A. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Mr. Smith, I'm just wondering, do you believe the Cowboys can have the number one offense in the National Football League?
How do?
I do. I really feel that way. The reason, listen, I'm not confident they're going to win the Super Bowl. Hell, I'm not even confident they're going to win a playoff game. But am I confident that they can have a top-rated offense? Yes, when you got a running back like Ezekiel Elliott, when you got the weapons at the wideout spot, when you got Dak coming back, if you give him any protection whatsoever, and the way that Kellen Moore, who's been there a little while now, is going to unleash them to some degree, I definitely think, and not only that, the absence of faith that they'll in all likelihood have in their defense, I think that spells for a lot of offensive production, to be quite honest with you. Now, what we have to remember that's very, very important, this is very important to bring up. Just because you are the number one offense don't mean you're number one when it counts. You see, Max, what happens is I want you to take into account, for example, you know, that miraculous victory they had when they lost to when they beat the Atlanta Falcons. Remember when they beat the Atlanta Falcons? The score was 40-39. Now, that's an aberration because they actually won that game. But understand what I'm trying to say about the Cowboys. I could see the Cowboys being down a bunch of points and coming back and losing, but the numbers look good. You see what I'm saying? Yes, I could see the Dallas Cowboys accumulating numbers. I
knew he was being too straight and too nice. I knew it was something up that sleeve of yours.
I could see the Cowboys accumulating numbers when they don't really matter. Yes, I could see those kind of things happening. And at the end of the day, Max, we look at them and we go like this. Wow, yards accumulated. Points accumulated. All right, look at that rushing. How many yards they're averaging per rush? How many yards they're averaging per pass? But the record is 8-9. I can see that. I can see something like that happening. So, just because I'm saying they're going to have the number one offense doesn't really mean it's going to be the number one offense.
No, I see what you're doing.
Statistically.
I didn't know where you were going with this.
I knew something was up.
I hate to rain on your parade here, or maybe I don't. This is for because this isn't for the Cowboys fans either. They ain't going to like this either. There's no way you're going to have your wish come true here. And the Cowboys have the number one offense, but it's really empty calories, and they crash when it matters most. They have a losing record because the Kansas City Chiefs exist. They actually exist. And there is no way the Cowboys offense is going to be better than that Chiefs offense. We've already seen what Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce can do. Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out of the backfield now who can also catch passes. We've seen what all these guys can do. Stephen A. McCall Hardman, as a third option on here. We know what they're capable of doing skills position. What's the issue been with the Chiefs? Why have the Cowboys been so good? Just because they have skills position players? Because they've had the offensive line. I don't know that the Cowboys' offensive line will be better than the Chiefs' offensive line this season. Yes, the Chiefs' offensive line, where Mahomes was running for his life on every snap in the Super Bowl. That offensive line was completely remade overnight. Not so hard if you're a Giants fan or a fan of one of these teams with hapless offensive lines for a decade. No, Chiefs showed it wasn't that hard. They traded for Orlando Brown Jr., who is a all-pro level left tackle. They signed Joe Thuney, who is an all-pro level guard. Remember when there was talk about Creed Humphrey falling in the draft? Maybe the Rams could get him to replace Blythe if Blythe left at center. Well, not only did Blythe leave the Rams at center to go to the Chiefs, but then Creed Humphrey fell to the Chiefs. They also have their offensive line is stud after stud after stud. Even on the right side, Mike Remmer's a solid guy. So they might have, like the Chiefs will have, by the middle of the season, one of the best offensive lines in the game to go with the best quarterback maybe who ever lived in his prime, to go with a dynamic running back out who can catch passes out of the backfield, and the fastest land mammal on earth, Tyreek Hill, and the all-pro, all-world Travis Kelce. The Chiefs will have the best offense in the game.
You know, Max, I get where you're coming from, and I understand it. But let me tell you something right now. Here's the part that I think you're missing. We saw what happened to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I know you just brought up the offensive line because obviously that's what compromised Patrick Mahomes and had him running for his life, along with an injured foot that he obviously has had surgery on, and he's he's healed from. What I would say to you is this: when a team shows the rest of the league an ingredients to inconvenience you, not that it's going to prevent Kansas City from winning games, but I do think it's going to prevent them from winning it with the ease they customarily showed us they can win the games with. When you turn a game into a smash mouth contest and you start putting a hat on people, putting that helmet, putting that wood on them and what have you, it changes things. It changed things for Tyreek Hill. It changed things for Patrick Mahomes. Hell, it changed things for Andy Reid because he never expected that to happen to his player. And let's not forget Eric Bieniemy, who's an offensive coordinator who we both believe should have had a head coaching job by now, but probably never will get one if he didn't get one this past offseason. What I'm saying is when you look at it from that perspective, and then you look at some of the teams that they're going to go against this year. I'm just looking at some of the teams on their schedule, Mac. That's why I went to my computer to pull up some of the games, okay? Because we've got a situation here where we look at them, and, you know, you're talking about Ravens, Eagles, Washington. Obviously, you got the NFC East competition. You've got AFC West, your division, with Las Vegas and Denver, and and all of that stuff. And so I look at, and obviously the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint that you're gonna have some games, and every opponent that goes up against you is going to try to make it as physical as possible. I'm not saying they're going to beat Kansas City. I'm not saying their offense is going to be prolific. But I'm saying the ease and the level of dominance that we witness, my personal opinion is that you don't recover from the kind of beat down that they suffered from in the Super Bowl.
Well,
that doesn't have some kind of effect in terms of how things are going to be for opponents. Somebody is going to figure something out. And that it wasn't just, and I'm again, just like you said, the offensive line, it wasn't just the offensive line.
This is one thing I'll say.
You had a couple of hearts that were taken that day.
Well, if you think the Chiefs got their hearts took, that's a different story.
No, not the team.
I'll say this though.
A couple of people.
I'll say this though. You brought up this player as the key player on the team, I don't know, a month ago or so, and I'll give you credit for this. If McCole Hardman if he takes a step forward, everything you said could be true, and it just won't matter. What the league will find out is, ain't nothing we could do. If McCole Hardman takes a step forward, ain't nothing we can do. That offense is just going to put up points. It doesn't matter what you do.
There's always something you can do in football. When you play a violent sport like that, there's always something you can do.
You can do a scoreboard run up.
Okay, Brick, settle down.
But no, I'm serious.
You don't really believe the Cowboys could have the number one offense with that O-line, Stephen A. We're talking Chiefs, Bills, Packers, Bucks, Tennessee. I know you don't believe that.
The offensive line has to improve. There's no doubt about that. But I'm just looking at the weapons that they have available. It is not beyond the realm of comprehension when you have those amount of weapons that the Dallas Cowboys can have a top-rated offense. Now, will it translate to wins? No. But I could see the Dallas Cowboys averaging 30 a game.
Oh, we're not arguing that the Dallas is going to have an excellent offense.
But the Bills are going to, the Packers, the Bucks. There's just other teams I think that are stronger.
I'm not sure all those teams you just mentioned have a better offense than the Cowboys. They might have a better quarterback. I don't know if they have a better
Kansas City off the list, I might even go with you.
We got to go to break. I'm getting yelled at. All right, you don't want to miss more from the Durant and Draymond interview. Could Draymond's time with the Warriors be up due to those recent candid comments? Those much easier for the former MVP to take his talents elsewhere. In 2022, the beautiful mystery that is Aaron Rodgers is making this very clear. Oh, and the other GOAT also addressing his future. Here's Rodgers and Brady.
I don't want a farewell tour. I don't know what's going to happen after the season, but I'm going to enjoy it with the right perspective for sure, and not look at it as I'm getting through this. I'm just going to enjoy the hell out of, all of it.
I love physically to train and to put myself in a position to compete. I love the mental aspect of the sport, And I have a lot of fun doing it. It's a lot of joy in my life. So got to keep earning it, you know? I don't think it's any aspect of me that thinks what I've done last year means anything. I got to go do it this year.
Clean slate every single year. He's got to prove himself. Max, better Super Bowl story at the end of this season, Brady or Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers. In fact, like, we just saw the Tom Brady story. That was incredible. You know, we're going to see it again.
That was a solid story.
That was a great story. We're going to see that story again. Just went to that movie. It was good. Thumbs up. You know, like, I'd like to see another movie. Stephen A., this is not unlike a heavyweight division that Mike Tyson was dominating. Remember back when? It's amazing to have Mike Tyson there, but if it's only all about him, it's not as interesting as when Holyfield and Lennox and Riddick Bowe came up. That was more interesting. Let's get some more characters involved. And why not Aaron Rodgers? He makes the most sense. Aaron Rodgers, this horse passed away a year ago. We're still beating it. Like, it's unbelievable. We're milking it for every ounce of story it has because people are interested in this soap opera. Aaron Rodgers, who until I put my eyes on Patrick Mahomes, I thought was the best quarterback I'd ever seen, has been wanting out. We thought he might wind up out. He winds up back, but after this year, he can be out, so they have 1 year to get it done. Does he even want to be there? Is he fully committed? I mean, I think he is because he's back for the 1 year. But Aaron Rodgers, who guys like me always said, of course he's better than Tom Brady. If he had Belichick, he'd win the Super Bowl every year. Then Brady jumps to the NFC. And in year one, wins the Super Bowl and beats Aaron Rodgers to do it. Aaron Rodgers, who succeeded Brett Favre, who's one of the greatest of all time. And we all think he's better than Favre, right? Except how many Super Bowls has Aaron Rodgers won? One. Just like Brett Favre. Can he top that? Aaron Rodgers, who just yesterday said that he deserves more credit for revolutionizing, or I'm paraphrasing, for revolutionizing the position. Look at how he takes care of the football. Not only throws 40 touchdowns, his single-digit interceptions, right? Who could be waiting for him in the AFC when the dust settles? Aaron Rodgers 2.0 and Patrick Mahomes, who, if Rodgers led the way, then Mahomes, if anything, took it to another level. That's who could be waiting. If Aaron Rodgers wins the Super Bowl this year, that is the best possible story.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm glad you think so. Obviously, we disagree. First of all, Aaron Rodgers winning the Super Bowl would be a good story. I'm not going to deny that, particularly considering what happened this offseason. But it's really about him piggybacking off of a team he felt doubted him, winning the league MVP, but coming up short of a Super Bowl appearance and then following that up with a Super Bowl championship. It really comes down to that. And the reason why it's not nearly as interesting and as compelling as you tried to articulate is because the Packers are not a foe, meaning they're not an opponent that you get to knock off en route to your ascension. You see what I'm saying? The Packers themselves, that's the organization he plays for. So even if he proves people wrong and goes out there, plays lights out, wins a Super Bowl championship, Max, Gutekunst isn't hurt by that. Mark Murphy isn't hurt by that. The Packers organization isn't hurt by that. The fans aren't hurt by that because they all get a Super Bowl championship because of it. And because this is not basketball, it's a sport of football, you yourself have acknowledged that Gutekunst, okay, has done a pretty damn good job. Back-to-back trips to the NFC Championship game, Matt LaFleur as well. Okay, the roster that he's accumulated, some of the decisions, the 12 players that Aaron Rodgers threw out there during his epic press conference about how 9 of those was pretty damn good decisions by Gutekunst, no matter what Aaron Rodgers says. So there's no way that Aaron Rodgers wins a Super Bowl and Gutekunst and Murphy and those boys don't end up receiving some shine from it because they'd be Super Bowl champions too. Here's the story. Here's the ultimate story. And put me up on the screen because I want to see Molly as well as Max. When I say this, I want to see Molly's self as well. Ain't no story.
Everyone wants to see Molly.
No story. Well, yeah, that's true. Everybody wants to see Molly on this show. She's clearly the best looking person on this show. But here's the deal. I'm second though, Max. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make, I'm just playing with you. The point is that I'm making, what if Tom Brady meets Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl?
Man makes a point.
Yeah.
And then beats Belichick.
Or loses.
Okay, don't get hysterical.
No. Are you ready for this? Are y'all ready for this? What if Tom Brady goes to the Super Bowl and before he beats Belichick, announces before the Super Bowl, this is it for me. I'm done after this season. I know he got a 2-year deal. I know he wants to play 45. I know all of that. But what if he sits up there and says,
Okay,
I'm
that
done.
trumps Rodgers. I'll give you that.
This is it.
Well, yeah,
Nothing
he's
trumps
layers.
it.
Yeah, now you added
If was the fifth, what,
angle.
Stephen A? If was the fifth, what?
All right,
That is the better movie, Stephen A. I'll give you that.
All right, well, I'm in Hollywood. But the point that I'm making is, let's get rid of what I just pointed out, how
Fine.
he announced that he's going to leave. Let's get rid of that, okay? Let's
That was
just
a good
simply
twist.
say Tom Brady's playing, and Tom Brady is going up against Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots to the Super Bowl. There's no story better than that in the NFL. No story better than that. None.
Well, I mean,
That seems less likely to me, though, Stephen A., than Aaron Rodgers winning a Super Bowl.
Time out. I got a second story that's better than Aaron Rodgers. What if Brady gets a rematch with Mahomes? That's better than Rodgers.
No.
I would rather see Rodgers Mahomes, actually. And by the way, I don't think this is Brady's.
Scorched earth Rodgers.
I don't think this is going to be Brady's last year. You would be right. I would agree with you about Brady Belichick.
No, I'm saying, forget the last year. Forget that last year part.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's just me being Hollywood.
I don't think
me
this
being
is
Hollywood.
Belichick's last year. It was a good twist. I don't think this is Belichick's last year. I don't think it's Brady's last year.
Right, neither do I.
If one or either announced before the season, it would be. I'm with you. But as of right now, even Brady and Belichick meeting in the Super Bowl this upcoming season, it's great. I'm not going to deny it. It's great, and it's close. I still would rather see Rodgers get it done.
Time out.
Brady and Belichick have dominated the Super Bowl. Let's get some more characters involved.
This ain't Hollywood, y'all. This is very, very plausible. Okay. Patrick Mahomes steps out on the field. Tom Brady and his 22 returning starters, including Tom Brady, they all just run roughshod over the NFL, particularly the NFC. They're marching towards the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, in the AFC, Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City is tearing it up. And Patrick Mahomes is just sitting there every week. I just want a second shot. The residue of that Super Bowl performance still vexes me. I want it bad. I just want it bad. Could you imagine
what
that encounter would be?
But I'd rather see Rodgers.
Aren't we rushing past the fact that Matt LaFleur took the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands and handed it to Tom Brady with the NFC Championship on the line? If Aaron Rodgers gets revenge on Brady and then beats Mahomes in the Super Bowl?
See, Max is going to try to philosophize, and then I get all that point. It is valid, Max. It's valid. In your case, Molly, all you doing is giving me your preference. I said headline. I ain't say Molly. I said headlines.
I really think it's a bigger headline.
Tom Brady in a rematch against Patrick Mahomes would be a big. I can understand if you're talking about it. If you're talking about Aaron Rodgers going against Kansas City,
I'm having some technical.
But just Aaron Rodgers against anybody? No.
Stephen A., I'm not running for this discussion. Having some technical difficulties we've got to fix with my camera. We'll have more on this, guys. How about them Cowboys with Dak returning? Could America's team have the number one offense in the NFL? That shocking debate is next, and much more, of course, from that Draymond Durant conversation as well. Could Green's comments have a residual effect on the Warriors this coming season? You don't want to miss that. So the story.
What does that quote mean to you, Kevin?
Man, how good I am, I got to keep working.
NBA most valuable.
You're a real MVP.
Holding the outside.
Warriors back-to-back titles.
Is joining the Nets.
I want to be the best basketball player I can be. Y'all know who I am. I'm Kevin Durant.
Good day. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take on this Friday Eve. I'm Molly Karam-Rose. That is Max Kellerman.
Love Friday Eve.
You do. Stephen A. Smith from the West Coast. Gentlemen, how we doing? How we feeling?
Good morning. How y'all doing? How's
everybody doing? That's sharp. That's new.
It is kind of fly.
You went to Rodeo. You were on Rodeo, weren't you?
Well, I got this from Rodeo. That is true. However, I had it a few months ago. It's just that you pick your spots when to rock it. I mean, Molly would know about that. You pick your spots when to rock it. You know?
Absolutely. Friday Eve's the day. Guys, we've got some fresh, juicy sound. I don't know if you all saw it at home from Kevin Durant, nearly a 30-minute sit-down. I want to get into that. So it's an interview on Chips on Bleacher Report. Kevin Durant and Draymond Green said they believed Coach Steve Kerr and President Bob Myers were at fault for the way they handled the players' emotional back and forth on the floor that spilled over into the locker room after an overtime loss to the Clippers. That was in November of 2018. Now, the players' argument ultimately contributed to Durant leaving the team the following season. Essentially, both KD and Draymond, who's still with the Warriors, say the organization mishandled the incident that led to quickly. There's a lot of meat on this bone. Again, 24-minute interview. We're going to play it throughout the show, and we'll get all the reaction from Max and Stephen A. But we'll start with this particular subject. Stephen A., you heard Draymond. He said, you guys are going to mess this up. Do you think it's fair to blame Kerr on this?
Yes, I do. I don't think it should be limited to them, but I definitely think that there's some blame to go around. Some people would sit up there and say, well, you know what, this is about the players. Well, the players weren't the ones that held up Draymond Green for an hour and a half. It was Bob Myers and obviously Steve Kerr and those guys. And one of the things that I've religiously stated, Steve Kerr is a great guy. Please don't get me wrong, and I'm certainly not trying to cast any aspersions on him. But when KD departed from Golden State, one of the things you heard is that he wasn't necessarily feeling Steve Kerr. Now, that's not the reason he left or anything like that. He wasn't feeling him. He never said anything negative about him, didn't, castigate him in any way. They just didn't have the kind of relationship that people thought that, a head coach should have with one of his superstar players. Having said all of that, you can debate whether Draymond Green needed to be suspended or not or what have you. But in the end, if you're Bob Myers and you're Steve Kerr, you're supposed to have a pulse on the team to be able to handle this in a smoother fashion that it was handled. So I certainly understood where they were coming from. What I would tell you that where I said to some degree, when Kevin Durant brought up how when the stuff he was watching The Last Dance and when Scottie Pippen refused to enter the game, you had players getting on him. With all due respect, where the hell was Steph Curry? The babyface assassin, the greatest shooter that God has ever created, the clear, absolute superstar player for this team, the face of the franchise. Where was he at in all of this? I found it very, very conspicuous that Kevin Durant and Draymond Green never mentioned his name. Not one time. Because a lot of times we see things and we have seen things that have transpired with the Golden State Warriors. And other stars for other franchises would have been called upon to handle something. We've never done that with Steph Curry. No one ever says, what about Steph Curry? You know what? Maybe it's because he's 33 and he looks 16. That's how young he looks, okay? And obviously he's got that kind of wonderful, affable, personality. It's impossible to dislike him and all of that stuff. He's loved universally and whatever. But I can also tell you that anybody that comes to the Golden State Warriors knows that he's the golden child. And so for me, there's a lot of meat on this bone. As you said, there's a lot more that I have to say. I'll pass it to Max, and then we'll go back and forth, I guess, throughout the show. But what was very, very conspicuous to me is that particularly when you're talking about how a situation was handled, to point to the coach and to point to the GM, all right? And I applaud KD and Draymond. I thought it was a great interview. I thought both were very believable, relatively candid. I know both brothers. I speak to them, not all the time, but I speak to them. Got a lot of love and respect for both of them. So I'm not trying to cast any aspersions on either one of them. And I applaud and I appreciate them doing this interview. And I thought it was riveting. I thought it was a great watch. I thought Draymond did a great, great job of broaching subjects that most people wouldn't broach face to face with somebody that they've had an issue with. And he deserves to be applauded and KD deserves to be applauded. It's just that it jumped out of my mind, Max, just for the purposes of right now. What really was missing was I didn't hear Steph Curry's name, and he is the leader of this franchise.
Let me just say, watching that interview, I felt like we're in a new era of media. That's how significant an interview I felt it was. No one could have conducted that interview with KD like Draymond Green just did. And the fact that they're doing it while they're still active players, that's the kind of sit-down that Shaq had with Penny 20 years after they played together. They did it now. That was something. And let me say something else. If you are a student of life, and I hope you are, it is instructive, then, and you already know, you like to hear from other students of life. And that's what KD is. KD is very impressive. His journey in the NBA and his maturation and his obvious intelligence and introspection was really something to see. I didn't think there was one false note in that interview except blaming Steve Kerr. It's not that Steve Kerr and Bob Myers and everyone deserves some responsibility. I'm sure in any situation in life, you look back and you go, that wasn't handled optimally. Could have handled that one better, right? And there are things to be learned for the front office and for the coach, I am sure. And it plainly, based on the way Draymond and KD laid it out, they sounded authentic and wise. But in the end, guys, KD, it was your choice. Any team that ever existed, if you're available, KD, will open up the vault and say, go ahead, take whatever you want to do, except for the Knicks. James Dolan wanted certain provisions, apparently. But anyone else ever is like, oh, KD, sure, please stay. I'm quite sure they suspended Draymond Green because they want him. Like, look, KD, we're suspending him. You're the guy. So could they handle it better? Sure. Do they deserve some blame? Yeah. But it was a false note, Stephen A., because as direct as Draymond was with those questions, as real as both of those guys kept it, or seemed to keep it from where I was sitting, the one time, and this is human nature, you're sitting down with someone, you have respect for them, you have a relationship, and it's public, it's usually not going to get to the place where you two start butting heads and disagreeing about an old conflict. And what was it? KD's going to say, yeah, Dre, it's your fault that I left. Or, no, I'm a grown man. That's my decision, but I did not like the way that went down. To instead say, I don't like the way the organization handled it. The organization handles, look, every organization could handle certain things better or worse, but they handled things so well that KD wanted to play there. They handled things so well that had it not been for injury, they would have 3-peated, 4-peated, 5-peated, as many pizzas you want to throw him until KD got hurt, right? I mean, like, that's what it is. So that was the one note you cannot, if you're KD and Draymond in that moment, blame the coach in the front office when it was your decision to leave.
Real quick, Stephen A., he did say both. He said it was the incident and then how they handled it. He agreed with Draymond on that.
He did say that, but he did say that. But to address directly Max's point, here's where you're wrong, Max. You're thinking about it in an isolated situation as it pertains to the specificity of that particular subject at hand. KD, there is no question that Draymond Green isn't the reason KD left Golden State. KD clearly had his eyes on bigger ventures because he came to do what he did. He won back-to-back championships, and I think after he won the second championship, he pretty much knew that he was going to leave after that third and final year. That's number one. Number two, let's give KD credit where credit is due. After the incident occurred, days upon days had passed, and they asked KD, the media, have y'all gotten past this? KD said no. No, not at all. He was very, very clear about that. To the point where even Draymond later spoke on it and felt compelled to acknowledge. When I saw how hurt he was, I was like, damn, I didn't realize I hurt him like that. And so he felt compelled to ultimately address it at some point in time. My point is, they both know that they had addressed their issues with one another, but more importantly, they had acknowledged that even after days and weeks had passed, they still hadn't gotten past it, and they had been open about the fact that they had not gotten past it. Once they finally sat down with one another a few weeks ago and taped this podcast, it makes total perfect sense to me how they could bring other people into the equation, because they're saying it's a given that we ultimately had our issues and we didn't help ourselves with that incident that Draymond Green was clearly wrong about, because you don't come at your teammate publicly like that. The fact that it was on the bench and you came there and you had to be restrained and calmed down by DeMarcus Cousins. That's
DeMarcus Cousins, the cool-headed one in that situation.
You think? So what I'm saying is that's what happened. So the point is, they already dealt with each other. What they was doing was providing a macro perspective about what transpired that particular night and how they went and walked away feeling about everybody else. Because it's a foregone conclusion. It's a foregone conclusion how they felt about each other.
Huge shout out to Matt Reed for putting that montage together. That was great. All right, so pressure burst pipes or it makes diamonds. Which cat are you? All week we'll be counting down Stephen A. and Max's top 5 players with the most pressure on them heading into the season. Today, at number 3, Stephen A., has Baker Mayfield and his progressive commercials, and Max has Tua Tagovailoa. Tua isn't on Stephen A's pressure list at all. Max, why is Tua under more pressure than Baker?
Well, I figured it would be obvious. Look, Baker Mayfield, whatever you think about his ultimate upside, is a good NFL quarterback. We can see that. If the Browns decided, you know what, we're going to draft another guy in the first round to take over, to be at the helm of this franchise, he's not going to get to his second contract with us. We know that's not going to happen. But if they did, there'd be a healthy market for Baker's services. Whether or not he resets the market, he's going to have a big, fat second contract in the NFL. Baker's here to stay. Tua? Let's not forget, Tua Tagovailoa, not that long ago, was the special college quarterback. Remember, it was Justin Herbert, tank for Herbert, but by the end of that season, it's like, no, sorry, Tua's special.
Yeah.
Other than Trevor Lawrence, no one had more hype at their highest than Tua did. He was a left-handed Drew Brees, right? He had that special championship sense about him. We thought he was going to be a great NFL quarterback. Then the injury came, and Joe Burrow balls out, and Justin Herbert, who went after Tua, is just a special guy. And now Tua finds himself in Miami. Good coach, really good defense. Jalen Waddle just taken in the draft. There's a guy you can throw the ball 5 yards to, can take it to the house, right? No, the Miami Dolphins should be right in the thick of things. And is Tua where Baker is? Oh, no. No. If you thought of Tua the way you even think of Baker, you'd think of the Dolphins differently. Stephen A., Tua's a guy who's been taken out of multiple games. No, this is year 2. This is the development year. He had a lot of reps year 1. He's a year more removed from the injury. The time to show everybody that they were right when they said he's going to be special in the NFL is right now. He is under more pressure than Baker Mayfield.
They also added Will Fuller.
You actually just said what you said on national TV with a straight face?
Oh, I certainly did.
A second-year player who you just acknowledged, this is the developmental year. Let's see what you got. Max Kellerman, as you have tried in your failed attempts to imitate me, okay, you would remind me of things that I said. Well, I don't fail when it comes to reminding you of what you say. Molly,
Yes.
do you know of anyone who has raved about the Cleveland Browns and his expectations for them more than Max Kellerman?
Him and
Anybody.
Dan Orlovsky were championing that cause.
I'm not taking him to win the Super Bowl.
No, not even Dan Orlovsky. It would be Max Kellerman. And Baker Mayfield, the one who spent the first 2 years of his career having more progressive commercials than wins, before he finally decided to be relevant last year, courtesy of Kevin Stefanski's arrival, instead of Freddie Kitchens coaching the team. Baker Mayfield definitely upped his game and upped his stature and deserves our respect, and he certainly has it from me. But let's be very, very clear. When we think about Odell Beckham Jr. returning, when we think about the Jarvis Landrys of the world still being there, when we think about Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the backfield, when we think about what they're doing defensively, not just having Myles Garrett, all right, but you also acquired Jadeveon Clowney and what have you, and you see what they bring to the table. There is no question that the expectations are considerably more on the shoulders of Baker Mayfield because of the expectations of the Cleveland Browns. And if the Cleveland Browns don't get it done, who we going to look at? We going to look directly at Baker Mayfield. We ain't going to blame Nick Chubb. We ain't going to blame Kareem Hunt. We ain't going to blame Landry. All right, we might try to blame Odell Beckham Jr., but then ultimately that comes down to whether or not he got the football, okay, or not. And that would have something to do with Baker Mayfield, along with the attitude, even though ultimately that would be the responsibility of the grown man that is Odell Beckham Jr. In the end, the quarterback's going to have something to do with influencing your attitude as well. Everything you could point to about the Cleveland Browns comes back to Baker Mayfield.
That's why I had him 5th on my list, right? That's why he's in the top 5, but not more pressure than Tua right now. He's going to have a job. Baker's getting to the second contract. Baker's going to be a very rich man. Baker's not going to lose a starting job in the NFL. What you said about more progressive commercials than wins, he had 4 head coaches in 2 years and 1 game. He had Hugh Jackson, Greg Williams, Freddie Kitchens, and now Stefanski. By the way, the first 3 were so bad, they are unhirable in the NFL right now. At any level, like they can't get a job in the NFL. Greg Williams, Freddie Kitchens, Hugh Jackson as head coaches? Are they being considered for head coaches?
Greg Williams was not bad as a head coach of the Cleveland Browns. It was his behavior thereafter, particularly when he went to the Jets.
How about his play call?
Bountygate stuff.
Hold it, Max.
Yeah.
Why would you say that? You were on national TV saying that Greg Williams, you'd have no problem with him getting a head coaching job.
And then subsequent events have shown a light that it wasn't for him. But wait a minute, I don't want to get bogged down in that. We can disagree with that another time.
Off the field, the subsequent events were his behavior when he left Cleveland.
At the very least, we can agree that those three coaches weren't right for Baker Mayfield. There was a lot of change very quickly. He didn't look good. And as soon as Stefanski took over, he's looked very good. Baker's set whether or not he wins a Super Bowl. Tua can go from future superstar to not a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's on a winning team right now. The Dolphins should, if they have a real quarterback this year, they should be in the thick of things in the AFC East. He is fighting for his NFL starting life.
Cleveland has more expectations
I'm sorry to cut this short.
Miami's in the AFC East with New England and Buffalo.
All right, this is a riveting conversation, but guys, I really want to get back to that KD and Draymond interview. There is more to talk about. Stephen A. just brought new information to light. We are going to dive into all of that after the break, like only Max and Stephen A. can.
Stand right now is definitely really crazy, and for me to just be hitting a tennis ball in the United States right now and have people come and watch me play is, I don't know. Like, I would want to be myself in this situation rather than anyone else in the world.
You know, Max, she's 22 years old, and she's just so thoughtful and introspective. And all of us, I think, since COVID happened, right, we realized big things and feel more grateful for all of that. What was your reaction to her transparency?
She's very interesting. I was talking about KD, how impressive he is. She's obviously very likable and forthright and interesting, but think about what she's saying there. Naomi Osaka is saying, first of all, I want to go back to the reporter's original question, and the agent, characterized it as bullying, and it was not bullying. And in fact, it led to these kind of moments from an athlete. It led to the stuff we really want to know about, like what makes her tick, what's going on with her. She gave a thoughtful initial response. She had an emotional reaction. Then she came back and gave another thoughtful response, and we're all the richer for it. This is why we watch sports, not just to follow the ball and see who wins and loses, but to also understand the characters involved. What's at stake for them? What makes them tick? That's half the drama. And here we're illuminated by that question, ultimately. Stephen A., she's basically saying, the way I interpret it, she's saying, she's aware of what's going on in the world. Not only is she living through a COVID world, as we all are, and many young people are, all the young people are, but she also is, her father's Haitian. She has ties to Haiti, a place in extreme poverty for so long, and then just in this century started little by little to climb out of it year after year, and then gets hit with devastating earthquakes, right? And so that affects her. She's aware of what's going on in Afghanistan. That affects her. And she realizes, I'm winning just by living my life. It sounds like she kind of feels guilty about it when she can't feel grateful for it. And apparently her interactions with the media lead her to believe, wait a minute. This is really good what's happening with me. Oh, no, it's bad? Something's not good with me? I thought it was good. And so she's trapped in a situation where there's guilt because she can't even feel grateful for her good fortune, for which she's worked very hard, by the way. Like, that's a fascinating response from an interesting person, and I would just point out, it wouldn't have happened had the media not done its job, and of course, we are all fortunate that the subject of the question is someone as thoughtful and as transparent as Naomi Osaka, who was willing to answer it thoughtfully, honestly, and then even contemplate it more, come back and flesh out the answer.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that you're 1,000% correct and right on point in every word that you just uttered. And I couldn't be more proud of her in terms of her willingness to attempt to explain where she's coming from, because at the end of the day, when you're in the media, that's essentially what you're asking for. You're not requiring an explanation. You're simply saying that as members of the press, whose occupation is to disseminate messages to the masses. What you want to do is give the athletes an opportunity to do that themselves, using you as a conduit to do so, rather than interpreting it for them without speaking to them or hearing from them and just coming in up and drawing your own conclusions. Having said that, I want to take this a step further, Max, and tell you what's just you and Molly, just what's on my mind when I watched her yesterday. I thought about her and what she had to say. I thought about Kyrie Irving a lot. I thought about this guy that we've looked at and we've wondered from time to time, what's going on with your mind? Where are you at? You know, you signed on to do this job, blah, 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 blah. And then I go back to read articles about how he partnered with New York City to provide $250,000 worth of meals to those in need. I'm thinking about him speaking out in May about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and how he just wished that the violence would stop. I'm thinking about how he assisted a Pakistani village in terms of acquiring clean water. And you think about the philanthropy, just his humanity and his charity and the things that he is engaged in. And clearly, he is a brother whose heart is in the right place.
No question.
And wants to do a lot of good for a lot of people. And while we sit here, myself included, critical of some of the things we do that he may say or the times that he picks to say these things from time to time, I think it's important on a national platform like this to make sure the world understands Kyrie Irving is a pretty damn good dude whose heart is in the right place. Might be misunderstood sometime. It might be of his own doing because
KD just got past this when they were on the same team again at these Olympics that just happened in Tokyo. Go wherever you want. I didn't know if there was more information on that you want to discuss or what we just heard about the burner account and some other items.
Well, I'll go to Max. I'll go to Max after I say this point.
Okay.
It's just for clarification. I'm not trying to say that the person was saying nor was implying that there are no African Americans employed by the organization. I don't want the people to take that message from it. Even though I haven't asked and I haven't investigated that matter, there's a lot of folks within the Warriors organization that I know and I'm very close to, and I've got profound respect for that organization. I think they're first class. I think they've got a lead counsel there by the name of David Kelly and what have you, and along with other African Americans that work within the organization, if I remember correctly. The issue that the person had texted me about and was talking about is something in a roundabout manner we've alluded to when we've talked about the paucity of African American coaches at one time, how some of those openings needed to be filled by African Americans, how ultimately African Americans within the executive ranks needed to be addressed, because there was no one of African American descent that had any kind of cachet within the organization in folks' eyes that could have brought KD and Draymond together. That's the perception league-wide, no matter where you turn. It's not about numbers. It's not about bodies. It's about individuals of African-American descent employed by those organizations and what kind of power and influence are they truly granted to cultivate relationships and make a difference, to really have that impact. Because one of the untold stories, Max, is that you have a lot of these white executives in positions of power. And even though there are black people employed, those executives are incredibly guarded. They keep people at bay because they want to be the ones to have the relationship. They don't want you to be the one to do so because that could pose a threat, because ultimately your relationship with the players can elevate to such a degree that you ultimately become empowered and you could have usurped their authority and rendered them null and void. There's a lot of guys in the professional ranks, basketball, football, etc., that have those issues in the respective organizations that they work for, and it limits their ability to really have the kind of influence they think they deserve. And the players notice this kind of stuff, and they've talked about it periodically. That's what
I mean, I think that's something that should be said and talked about. You know, you've brought up how even when you have African American executives in the NBA, for example, how many of them are actually the last word under the ownership, which, by the way, is also almost all white. Under ownership, that how many of them have final say, really? You could talk about Masai Ujiri, who is African, I guess Canadian now, but like that, but not African American in the way the phrases meant.
That was the
Okay.
embarrassing part, Max. The only black person that had power in the NBA up
Is
until
African in
recently
Canada.
wasn't even an African American. He was an African.
Right, and not in,
And he was
in
coaching,
Canada.
and he was
Yeah.
running an organization in Canada. Nobody in America had
Right.
that kind of power.
He's an
in the
African
NBA.
North American. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's obviously something worthy of discussion. I want to talk about, though, I want to focus on my big takeaway from that is it felt like I can't overstate how significant the interview felt for me. And I know there's only one Draymond Green. Not any athlete can do this, although you think about all the smoke and different podcasts like that are making waves because you have guys able to get athletes because they are sometimes former, sometimes current athletes who've been through similar experiences and provided they're also intelligent and fearless, right? As many of the guys who are athletes and former athletes in media are. There are a lot of great guys who fit that description, including many who work here at ESPN that we have on this show all the time. It just felt like something about this interview felt like a turning point in media history to me even. The way Draymond was able to get KD to talk about stuff and the level of respect KD has for Draymond, which is obvious because Draymond's experienced a lot of the same stuff. I want to talk about Naomi Osaka, Stephen A., and how the reason I'm thinking about her, and we were talking about her earlier. Part of what she said, the reason she got emotional from the question asked a couple days ago, the reason she came back to it a couple days later, is she said she almost feels guilty about how good she has it, knowing what's going on in the world, and then also feels like guilty because she has to feel bad. She can't even acknowledge it. She can't even really savor it and appreciate her good fortune, which she's earned, because she's made to feel bad constantly. Like, what am I doing something wrong? Every time I talk to the media, something's bad. I did something bad. I understand where a guy like Kevin Garnett or LeBron James, for example, or Naomi Osaka must wake up in the morning and think, wait a minute, I'm so great at what I do. As you bring up constantly, I'm philanthropic. I have empathy for people. I want to make the world a better place, not just be one of the greatest performers of all time in my sport, right? Why is it that half the things said about me, it seems, are negative? If you're going to talk about me, you're going to say, 50% of the stuff is negative? Maybe if 1% of the stuff was negative, okay, no one's perfect. But why so much negative? And the answer and the reason athletes as interviewers, I think, are really important right now, the answer is the perfect is boring. And all the good stuff you do, we understand. But as I constantly say, it's not just about following the ball and the score. So much of this industry connects with people because they're characters. We tell a story through characters. Who are they? What makes them tick? What are their goals? How great is the obstacle? What are their fatal flaws, right? We need to flesh that out in order to make the story interesting to us, to the audience. And by the way, the players are aware of this, obviously, on some level. It's the reason Superman is not as interesting a superhero as Spider-Man, right? The invincible character is with almost no flaws. There's one thing, kryptonite, right? Everything else is perfect. Is not as interesting as the fully fleshed out human character with lots of flaws. But coming from us, coming from people in the media who have not experienced what they've experienced, the questions will tend to the athlete, as Kevin Durant alluded to, seem more general, less focused, not real. It betrays a lack of intimate knowledge about what he's actually going through. Therefore, the question is less relevant. He's less inclined to engage with it. It feels more like an attack than a genuine trying to draw out the truth. I mean, that conversation was illuminating in that way. And I don't think anyone but Draymond could have conducted an interview with KD that would have elicited those kind of responses.
That's a lot there. I'll leave it at that. That is an awful lot that you had to say, because you lost me on a couple of points. But I will tell you this. In the end, I think the biggest point you and I both need to get back to is A, their willingness to be open about it, understood that, all of that stuff. You're talking to one another as opposed to talking to journalists, because I got news for you. I thought Draymond did an exceptional job. And I thought that KD did an exceptional job. But I got news for you. If I was sitting in the middle of that interview, if I was the one interviewing both of them, there's a few more questions I would have had. You understand? There's a few more questions I would have had. There's a couple of holes that needed to be filled there, okay? One of them being, again, Steph Curry. Now, we all know how much I love Steph Curry. I think Steph Curry is a superstar, surefire future first ballot Hall of Famer, the greatest shooter God has ever created, without question, and a really, really, really good guy, and doing some big things with his wife in the production world and stuff like that. Nothing but love for Steph Curry. But I'm alarmed at how we could sit up here talking about the Warriors. Steve Kerr's name comes up. Bob Myers' name comes up. KD's name comes up for obvious reasons, as well as Draymond Green. We even saw footage of DeMarcus Cousins. Shades and all. We saw footage of DeMarcus Cousins. I mean, we didn't have to show that. We show everybody. But Steph Curry, this has gone on. These feelings obviously had lingered for a while, and it was never, ever broached or addressed by Steph Curry. Why is that of interest to me? I'm going to tell you why it's of interest to me. How many times have we lamented the fact that Mark Jackson is not a head coach for the Golden State Warriors? We appreciate the greatness of Steve Kerr. We recognize the fact that he's done a hell of a job and he deserves all the praise and accolades that he has received. But there was a foundation that was built in Golden State before Steve Kerr ever arrived. A foundation he was allowed to piggyback off of and finish a job somebody else started. That person was Mark Jackson. When Mark Jackson was let go, we saw Draymond speak up about how he was sad to see Draymond go. Who did we not hear from? Who had to be pressed about that issue? It would be Steph Curry. When we think about Steph Curry, we see an individual that is a phenomenal role model in every sense. This is not to cast any aspersions. I love this brother. There's no aspersion there, but we got a job to do here. And in the process of, I know if this were LeBron team, we would have talked about him. We'd have said, where is he? I know if something happened in Brooklyn, we'd be like, where's KD? I know that if we see something happens in Houston, we would have said James Harden. I know if we saw something happen in Milwaukee, we'd be like, where's the Greek Freak? I know anywhere else, we'd have brought up those names. How in God's name do we not bring up Steph Curry? I'm going to ask the question on national television, rhetorically somewhat, because I don't particularly care at this particular moment in time. What's done is done. They're not even teammates anymore. They're having a conversation. But I am going to ask the question rhetorically, where was Steph Curry? Because what's going on in Golden State, or what has gone on in Golden State, and no one will deny this. A matter of fact, I swear to you, figuratively speaking, I might throw something at somebody. They even try to deny this. In Golden State, there's Steph Curry, and then there's everybody else. This man is so beloved, and I'm not talking about the fans. That's a given. I'm talking about an organization. Steph Curry is treated, ask anybody, is held in such high regard. He is truly the gold standard. They don't just love his game, they love him. What kind of effect did that have on KD? We don't know. What kind of effect is that having on Draymond Green? We don't know. Matter of fact, why is Draymond speaking out? I mean, this is a brilliant brother. There's no dumb in Draymond Green. You got to know that if you do this interview and you dredge up this stuff, that from the owner Joe Lacob and his partners on down to Bob Myers and all the analytics crew they got employed by the organization, right on down to Steve Kerr. All of those folks are going to be like, damn, this ain't something we wanted to hear. Well, what we hearing it for? What is it you really feel in Draymond Green? What the hell is going on? Why would you feel the need to say this at this particular moment in time and dredge this stuff up? Especially when you know, unlike KD, you got to come back here with us. Why did you not care? What were you trying to say? What's really behind all of this? Because you didn't just speak about KD. If it were a conversation just about him and KD, Max, no biggie. Oh, no. They brought up the Warriors organization. And as a result, we sitting up here not just talking about KD, not just talking about Draymond. We talking about the Warriors organization. And to a lesser degree, because Clay ain't Steph, even though he's beloved, another future first ballot Hall of Famer, top 5 shooter of all time, beautiful, honest brother, good dude. But how's he feeling? And how come his name wasn't mentioned? At some point in time, especially when it comes to Steph Curry, we have an obligation to ask the question, where the hell was he while all of this was happening? He is the face of the franchise. I'm just saying.
Well, you said a whole lot there. And let me just respond to one piece.
Huge shout out to Matt Reed for putting that montage together. That was great. All right, so pressure burst pipes or it makes diamonds. Which cat are you? All week we'll be counting down Stephen A. and Max's top 5 players with the most pressure on them heading into the season. Today, at number 3, Stephen A. has Baker Mayfield and his progressive commercials, and Max has Tua Tagovailoa. Tua isn't on Stephen A.'s pressure list at all. Max, why is Tua under more pressure than Baker?
Well, I figured it would be obvious. Look, Baker...
Scared because, like, sometimes I would see headlines of, like, players losing and then the headline the next day would be, like, a collapse or, like, they're not that great anymore. So then I was thinking... me waking up every day, for me, I should feel like I'm winning, you know? Like, the choice to go out there and play, to go see fans, that people come out and watch me play, that itself is an accomplishment. And I'm not sure when along the way I started desensitizing that. Like, it started not being like an accomplishment for me. So I felt like I was very ungrateful on that fact. And then I don't know. Like, I think definitely this whole COVID thing was really stressful with the bubbles and not seeing people and not having, like, the interactions. But I think, like, I guess seeing the state of the world, like, how everything is in Haiti, how everything is in Afghanistan right now is definitely really crazy. And for me to just be hitting a tennis ball in the United States right now and have people come and watch me play is... I don't know. Like, I would want to be myself in this situation rather than anyone else in the world.
You know, Max, she's 22 years old, and she's just so thoughtful and introspective. And all of us, I think, since COVID happened, right, we realized big things and feel more grateful for all of that. What was your reaction to her transparency?
She's very interesting. I was talking about KD, how impressive he is. She's obviously very likable and forthright and interesting, but think about what she's saying there. Naomi Osaka is saying, first of all, I want to go back to the reporter's original question, and the agent, characterized it as bullying, and it was not bullying. And in fact, it led to these kind of moments from an athlete. It led to the stuff we really want to know about, like what makes her tick, what's going on with her. She gave a thoughtful initial response. She had an emotional reaction. Then she came back and gave another thoughtful response, and we're all the richer for it. This is why we watch sports, not just to follow the ball and see who wins and loses, but to also understand the characters involved. What's at stake for them? What makes them tick? That's half the drama. And here we're illuminated by that question, ultimately. Stephen A., she's basically saying, the way I interpret it, she's saying, she's aware of what's going on in the world. Not only is she living through a COVID world, as we all are, and many young people are, all the young people are, but she also is, her father's Haitian. She has ties to Haiti, a place in extreme poverty for so long, and then just in this century started little by little to climb out of it year after year, and then gets hit with devastating earthquakes, right? And so that affects her. She's aware of what's going on in Afghanistan. That affects her. And she realizes, I'm winning just by living my life. It sounds like she kind of feels guilty about it when she can't feel grateful for it. And apparently her interactions with the media lead her to believe, wait a minute. This is really good what's happening with me. Oh, no, it's bad? Something's not good with me? I thought it was good. And so she's trapped in a situation where there's guilt because she can't even feel grateful for her good fortune, for which she's worked very hard, by the way. Like, that's a fascinating response from an interesting person. And I would just point out, it wouldn't have happened had the media not done its job. And of course, we are all fortunate that the subject of the question is someone as thoughtful and as transparent as Naomi Osaka, who was willing to answer it thoughtfully, honestly, and then even contemplate it more, come back and flesh out the answer.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that you're 1,000% correct and right on point in every word that you just uttered. And I couldn't be more proud of her in terms of her willingness to attempt to explain where she's coming from, because at the end of the day, when you're in the media, that's essentially what you're asking for. You're not requiring an explanation. You're simply saying that as members of the press, whose occupation is to disseminate messages to the masses, what you want to do is give the athletes an opportunity to do that themselves, using you as a conduit to do so, rather than interpreting it for them without speaking to them or hearing from them and just coming in up and drawing your own conclusions. Having said that, I want to take this a step further, Max, and tell you what's just, you and Molly, just what's on my mind when I watched her yesterday. I thought about her and what she had to say. I thought about Kyrie Irving a lot. I thought about this guy that we've looked at and we've wondered from time to time, what's going on with your mind? Where are you at? You know, you signed on to do this job, blah, 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 blah. And then I go back to read articles about how he partnered with New York City to provide $250,000 worth of meals to those in need. I'm thinking about him speaking out in May about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and how he just wished that the violence would stop. I'm thinking about how he assisted a Pakistani village in terms of acquiring clean water. And you think about the philanthropy, just his humanity and his charity and the things that he is engaged in. And clearly, he is a brother whose heart is in the right place.
No question.
And wants to do a lot of good for a lot of people. And while we sit here, myself included, critical of some of the things we do that he may say, or the times that he picks to say these things from time to time, I think it's important on a national platform like this to make sure the world understands Kyrie Irving is a pretty damn good dude whose heart is in the right place. Might be misunderstood sometime. It might be of his own doing because he might not explain himself as thoroughly as he could.
Because he's not perfect like any of us.
Exactly.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, in the end, when you consider his deeds, this is a beautiful brother who's doing a lot of beautiful things for a lot of people that need that kind of beauty and that kind of heartfelt humanity that he has in order to survive, let alone prosper. And what I would say by bringing attention to the Kyrie Irvings of the world, to the Naomi Osakas of the world and what have you, there is a heightened level of sensitivity that we all should give them. But in return, they should understand that those absent of it, that those who struggle to divert their attention away from the games they play, it's not just because they may not share your humanity, which is unfortunate, or they might not be as knowledgeable as you are about a particular subject, or they might be preoccupied with their own occupational challenges, but also because you signed on to do that job. So in other words, what I would say to Naomi Osaka, what I would say to Kyrie Irving and everybody else is that be mindful of the fact that you have more fans than cynics. You have far more people who appreciate your greatness, not just as athletes, but as human beings, than you realize. But the other side to it is that the only reason why people might come at you about the games is because you signed on to play those games. And that's why they're in front of you in the first place. And that's something that you always have to be mindful of, because, again, they're going to want the tennis. They're going to want the basketball. They're going to want all of these other things. All of that other stuff that comes with it, it should come with it. If that's a part of you, we should embrace it. No question about it.
There's a lot more to say about that, Stephen A. You brought up a whole lot, and we can get into it in the Durant stuff because it's related, and I know we're running short on time.
Yeah. And I'll just wrap by saying this. It's so refreshing to see her in an age when people are so focused on money and social media and being famous for nothing. This is somebody that could be so self-focused on her craft. She's the top of her game, yet you see where her heart is and what an empath, and she's focused on the greater good. And it's truly beautiful, and I want to applaud her, and I agree with you on Kyrie as well. I'm glad you brought that up, and we'll discuss him a little bit more later, as Max said. Okay, guys, former teammates had a